Everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited today. I'm super excited today. For my guest, for Batina, I am, happy that she has taken the time out today to really help us, both as professionals and as large organizations. There's a lot that's happening in the news. We're going to unpack it today. We're going to take a little bit more time today because this is really important. Again, helping employers and employees. But Bettina, I will let you introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. And actually, thank you so much for having me on the show. Everyone, my name is Batina Julian, and I am your transformational HR consultant, HR strategist. I have been in the HR space for it really doesn't matter the amount of years, but I've been in it for quite some time. I spent my entire career since college in HR, and it's one of my favorite spaces to be in. And I am an employee advocate. I'm an HR strategist. My specialties are HR technology, recruiting and talent acquisition, and actually keeping your talent as well as other HR practices.
No, I love that. In the news, we have seen, and it doesn't matter what industry now. It's technology, it's entertainment. It's like I'm just watching it, the food industry. I'm watching it everywhere. Like it's like people are being laid off or people are just quitting. They're like, I've had it, you know. And
Mhm.
when we were talking, one of the things that you mentioned was like, this is what it's a broken process. Like, how did the process get broken? I work just on the other end, like helping people get prepared for that opportunity. But there's so much more into it. So if you can just explain to us, how did the process get broken? We're gonna unpack that, and how can we fix it, because it's everybody's problem. I know it's an everybody's problem, but it's like, how can we begin to fix this?
Exactly, and I think that more organizations have started to realize that it is broken after the pandemic. So what happened after the pandemic was that it was really a candidate's game. It was the job seeker. It was their market, and organizations were struggling with finding people. They even though there was a time that they were laying off people, they were struggling finding people, and it was the job seekers market. And it's kind of switched. It's switched back to where it normally is, where it's half and half more so now. But I think that helped organizations realize that the candidate experience really is a broken one, and it really starts there. And I think that we can all identify and think back to an experience where we were a job seeker and it wasn't a great experience. We can think back to any experience we have, whether it was good or bad, and think through that process and realize what about that process made it good and what about that process made it bad. We've all had to apply to jobs at some point in our lives, and I think that that's when people are ignoring that part of it. Being in these spaces of HR and recruiting or business owners now, and not realizing that your same experience that you had, whether it was a bad one, is the same experience that other people are having, and it's damaging your brand.
Yeah, and I'm gonna ask you a question a little bit off script. I'm sure
Mhm.
that you probably have been hearing about it. It's like, with my Z's and millennial children, they're really on TikTok. But I've been watching people really go to TikTok, um, as they're being laid off. Like I've been laid off before, and I'm not sure if I would want to record that, but they're recording the layoffs, and as I listen to the people who are laying the people off, they don't sound jovial, they don't sound joyful. They really sound like, man, I know I have to do this because I've been hired to do this. So
Mhm.
speaking on both sides of that, it's like, how do you handle that type of meeting? I've been laid off before. And it's not like I'm like, oh yeah, this is a super great feeling. But I saw some of the signs. So afterwards, I took myself out to lunch. I had some ice cream, and I was like, okay,
Ice cream makes it better.
ice you know, just on both sides of that, it's like, how can we make that smoother? And then also on the professional side, is this a good practice for people to record that just to really show the emotions and what's going on?
Okay, so yes, to answer both questions, I've been on both sides as well. I've been on the side of the late offer, and I've been on the side of about to be laid off. I've been laid off twice in my, well, no, laid off once in my career, got fired once, and and the other the late as a late offer, it was so emotional for me as an HR person. I felt like I got laid off even though I didn't. So that's, I always make the mistake of saying I got laid off twice because of that my experience of being a late offer, because as the person, as the HR person that's laying off people or helping with that transition, whether you're assisting with that transition, you're packing up people who were, if there's a mass layoff, you're packing up their stuff for them. uh, a lot of the people that work in the HR department aren't aware that that's going to be a task in their day until they arrive that day, because they too have to find out if they were laid off, if they're about to be laid off as well. So that's already an emotional day. So it's not very easy to make this transition an easy transition, because you are disappointing people, and the people who are telling you, more than likely they just found out the day before or the
Mhm.
day of, and they just found out that they're keeping their job. So I really think that it would be helpful to make people who are going to do the job, make them aware of that task prior to the day of or the day before, if possible. I know there's legal restraints, there's concerns, if, especially the bigger the company, there's concerns with it being leaked. But if you're a smaller company, you really can inform your HR team if they're going to be the ones that are going to be doing that work ahead of time, so they can prepare themselves mentally, that they're going to be given this bad news to people. Also, the transition, helping those people that you got laid off get back up, having true help. Resume writers, people that are going to help. They're going to help rewrite their resume. It's going to help them with interview skills. It's going to help them with their soft skills. Create those soft skills. Maybe even help them with acquiring more technical skills or those hard skills, helping that person transition into something else, especially if that person's been working with your company for 20 years and those people really don't know what to do. I've had to have those conversations tons of times with so many people that have been laid off after 20 years of service to that company. Those are the ones who really have no clue what to do. So it's very important to be able to help those people that you have let go transition into another job as much as you can, and that will lessen the blow. It's already going to be a blow. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt that day. But after all the emotions come down, and all of that happens, if you have help and that help actually reaches out to those people, as opposed to those people having to reach out to that help, that would be very helpful, I think.
I love that. You know, sometimes we're thinking like, oh, they kept their job, this, that, and the other, but not really thinking about that this was hard for them, you know, especially if it's a friend, you know, like you said, that this person had been working for like 20 years. And all of a sudden it's like okay, I have to lay off my friend, I have to lay, you know, and so that's tough. And like I said, I see exactly you know what you're talking about concerning, you know, it being leaked out, you know, so that's a big deal. So getting back to it, it's like, so one of the questions is, what are some frustrations candidates, hiring leaders, and recruiters are facing, you know, in this tough market? You know, so what's, you know, what's, well, you know, we've been talking about it, they've been recording it, they've been doing that, but even for recruiters, it's like, what's some of the tough things that they're facing?
Yeah, and, and actually, I forgot to answer the question about recording the reaction or recording the actual layoff. Personally, I don't think I don't think people should do it. Uh, and the reason why I think it hurts the employee or the former employee to record that is because organizations look at your social media. So I think it hurts you more to have something like that on your social media pages, more than anything. Send it to your friend if you want to. However, the truth of the matter is, if they do it, organizations can't retaliate against you. There's laws that say that we cannot, as organizations, retaliate against employees because they posted their thoughts about you or practices. We can't share secrets, because we probably sign an NDA, but we can't punish them for sharing their thoughts or their emotions in regards to what has occurred. But I personally, I'm a little old school in that matter. I wouldn't do it. I don't want them looking at my social media page saying I was crying over a layoff over a layoff, and or giving live commentary like they do with sports now. They give live commentary of the actual layoff happening. Like, what is that? But anyway, going back to the question of some frustrations of candidates, recruiters, and hiring leaders, I wanted to answer this for all three,
Okay.
because of the fact I wanted to show that there are really some issues on all sides. Every single role, the candidate, the recruiter, the hiring leader, they are facing frustrations in these areas, and it's impacting the organization bottom line. These are all, when it's a negative experience, it's a major impact to your recruiting process. When it's a positive experience, it's a major impact to your bottom line, to your organization. So I'm going to go over the frustrations without too much of an explanation, because throughout all of our questions, we're going to actually go through all these different frustrations when we answer all the other questions. But
That's good.
for the candidate, the main frustrations for a candidate is that organizations have a chronically long process, and that's including the considerable number of interviews that they are going through in order to get the job or not get the job, and also the charity work. And I call it charity work because it's free labor. That's what I call it. It's a thing I can say, but this is the closest thing I can say to not call it slavery. So the charity work that organizations are now asking candidates to do an assignment or a work task for them to prove that they have the skills for the role. So those are some of the major frustrations amongst, and also the cram job description. The cram job description is, I saw a LinkedIn post from an IT leader a little while ago, and it said basically hiring leaders in IT, and it listed a whole requirements such as, and it listed a whole bunch of different PC or computer languages, Python, and all the different languages. I don't know them all the different languages. That's not one person or one role. That's a whole IT department. So those crammed job descriptions where you're asking for the kitchen sink in this one person, and anyone that is a senior person or has experience, they recognize that that's a lot for one person to do.
Right.
And then they look at the salary range and they're like, that's not enough for that salary range. That's something that's frustrating, because they may want to work for your company, but that's an indicator to them that you are going to have these expectations that really can't be met by one person. So you're almost setting them up for failure. So it could be discouraging. So that's a frustration, as well as the flip side, a very generic job description where you're not telling them anything, and then hundreds and hundreds of people apply to that role, but you're not really saying anything in this job. But what is this job? So, and if you're a mid-level if you're an experienced person, you're going to look at that and say, this company doesn't know what they want. So at a certain point, you're going to get those entry-level people. But if you want people with experience and know what they're doing, they're going to look at these job descriptions, these job postings that you're putting out there, and make a judgment call and say, they don't really know.
So I wanted to go back because you mentioned something, and I've been hearing this, and the question is, when should you say no? And that is when they ask you to do a project
Mm-hmm.
before the job, it's part of the requirements. When is it too much? When do you say, wait a minute, that's a whole project? It's like, I'm already working and you want me to do this
Mm-hmm.
project. When do you hold it back, or when do you give your all? Because I know there's some debate about that.
Yeah, there is. And my typical rule, and I'm going to mention this later on in one of our questions, but my typical rule, it should only take the candidate 15 to 20 minutes. It should not take them longer. That's my rule, because you don't want them to spend a lot of time doing it. And I think about it as a mid-level person. An entry level person, they shouldn't have an assignment anyway, because it's entry level. So when we're talking about these assignments, I think technical, because that's typically what it should be for. And if it's technical, something that's going to take them 15 to 20 minutes, meaning they already have a sample. They already have some. It's so common that they already have a sample somewhere because they've done it already. They can just pull it out, make some tweaks, and then show it to you and present to you at that interview.
I love it. Thank you for answering that.
You're
That's
welcome.
that's huge. That's huge. So it's like again, we talked about a little bit about the internet streets, TikTok, wow, it's like what's happening out here in these internet streets.
Yeah.
And the again, layoffs is never like the shining light for any business. And I know this is huge for employer brand on how you actually do it. But again, like you said, concerning security for not only people, because if you tell them too soon, some people actually will go crazy, psychologically, they can't take it. But then
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about risk management for the business, making sure that nothing is vandalized within the business or within that organization. What is the right way to properly go about, laying off, hiring, and keeping a very positive employer brand?
So part of it is the plan, like the structure, the process that you have set in place to get this done. So it really, and a lot of organizations have done it multiple times. Some organizations have not, but regardless, the largest organizations still get consultants to help them. The largest largest organizations have done it more than once I've seen in my entire career, I've seen the same organizations do it, not over and over again, but more than once in my lifetime.
Mhm.
And so, but they are still getting consultants to do it. They're still not just relying on their HR department. They're not just, because it's different. When I got laid off, it was in person. They pull us all into a room, and depending on what room you were in, that was the room that was laid off. That's how it happened. That's how mine was done. You can't do that same, and that was horrible. You were scared all day. And you can't do that same thing today. So you still need the consultants or people that are experts in it to help you out. So I would say that's your first step. Ask an expert, how should I do this today? Because it has to happen.
Okay.
And that's at the end of the day, because they're the ones who are going to are staying up to date with the generations and how to best communicate with those people. Now it's done mostly online, and there's different ways that I've seen. I've seen organizations where some major tech companies have let people know the day before that this is a possibility, that they receive an email before the actual D-Day, that it's a possibility that, well, or your department is going to have layoffs. So be
That's
prepared
good.
for the
Yeah.
fact that it may be you. And then the next day is when they find out that it's them, or if it's not them. So preparation and as much transparency as possible really is the key. So I would say consulting help, transparency, and preparing the people as much as possible as you can. And the internet streets really do impact your brand. It is unbelievable. And if you think about when we have a customer experience and we go to the store and we have a bad experience with a customer, when do you write that review? Do you write
Yeah.
that review every time you have a great experience? I know I don't. Sometimes I do. When it's a phenomenal experience, I am going onto their page and saying that such and such gave me a really great experience. But most of the time, it's when I just had bad ramen 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I just had bad ramen, and I went to those internet streets and I posted about my experience with this ramen. So that, and it's the same thing happening with your employer brand. It's the same. Candidates are doing the same exact thing when they're having these bad experiences with you, when it's in the recruiting process or when it's in the layoff process. If you are not taking care of the people that you have laid off, they are going to have a bad taste in their mouth about you, and
Hmm.
they're not going to buy from you any longer. They will not be a customer of your company any longer. Same thing with when you're hiring people. If the candidate experience is a bad one, over actually I have stats. I do have stats. Some stats. Uh, 56% of respondents. Okay, actually, let me tell you where the stats are coming from.
Okay.
An applicant tracking system called ISIMS, very popular, very huge applicant tracking system. It's called ISIMS. They surveyed 1,000 candidates, and
Wow.
this is last year, 2023, and 56% of those respondents would be less likely to be a consumer of a brand if they had a bad experience applying or interviewing for the job. So it's
That's
in your bottom line. That's
huge.
huge.
That's not even before you even get hired. This is the
Yeah,
before.
this is
Wow.
before. That's huge. So imagine if you have a layoff and it's a bad one and you don't take care of them. Like the aftercare. It's not gonna layoffs are not gonna be good, but the aftercare is really what matters. How much that's going to impact your bottom line. 72% of those people expect the application process to take 3 weeks or less. 46% said their last job search was frustrating or long. And 18% of those people would post a review on Glassdoor, Indeed, or other social media sites. Those are all like large numbers of
Sorry.
of what you look like as an employer. So have you? I ask all employers, all business owners, even if you're small, have you looked to see what these employees are saying about you, your former employees, your current employees, what they're saying about you on these internet streets? Because they're saying something.
Yeah, because even when you mention, and that takes us into our next question, how long should the hiring process take? Because I heard one young lady a couple of weeks ago. It was more like it was like entry level to mid level, and I want to say she was like on her sixth interview, and I'm like, that's crazy. Now, when we're talking about executives and we're giving them a quarter of a million, half a million, as we go up in those numbers, but why not gather everybody together? Some people are like, oh, that makes us nervous. No, let's just get it done. Let's just get it done and over with, because a lot of the interviewers themselves, when I've interviewed them concerning how they feel about interviewing, they don't even want to interview. They just want to get answer these questions and get it done. So that consumes their day.
Mm-hmm.
So just speaking to, when are there too many interviews? When is it not enough? How long should it take? Honestly, how long should it take?
Yes.
Before like, okay, I need to be looking somewhere else.
Yeah, I call those interview red flags. Those are interview red flags. I tell my career consulting clients, I tell my corporate clients, don't do this because it is a red flag. I'm looking if we have more than 3 interviews, I'm looking at you funny. Right. I'm starting to look, but if you have told me in advance, so part the before we even get to the length of it, the first piece of it is that you need to tell the candidate the process. You need to tell them how long it's going to be. I don't care what level you're at, from entry level to senior level, where we're talking about our C-suite. Our C-suite are going to expect a long interview process, but you should still tell them because they're going to be their C-suite. They're likely working somewhere else.
Right,
Usually
right.
C-suite, they're working someplace else, and they have to make that transition happening, and they don't have time. So you need to tell them, and they are telling them because they have that respect for those people in the C-suite. So you need to have the same respect for senior, mid, and entry level that you have for your C-suite applicants, right? So you should really be telling them how long the interview process is. If you tell me 5 interview steps, I'm not going to look at you funny, but I am going to look at you funny if it changes. But I am
Mhm.
going to be aware at least there's 5 interviews, so I can ask you more questions in regards to what the process is. You should tell them each step of the process. If you get this far, then there's this. If you get this far, then there's this. If you don't tell them that, that's an interview. That's an interview red flag. If it's more than four, literally, if it's I say 3, but really, it's if it's more than 4 interviews, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you want in most cases, and you're basically saying to this candidate that I'm not really sure if you deserve this job, but we're just going to keep on making you jump through these hoops just so we can see and make sure that you can do this job. So you're really, in a way, not showing respect for the person's time, for
That's good.
their commitments they already have, if you're going beyond 4 interviews, especially if they're not going to get the job.
Yeah, so with that, as a candidate, which is important because obviously you were interviewing with this company because you wanted to be a part of this company, what is just a really professional way for the candidate to say, I'm a bow out, so they are considered again, for another position, perhaps for the company, like they really want to work for this company, but maybe that particular department, they don't have it together and they're just, like you said, trying to figure out if they're the piece to the puzzle. Me as a candidate, I'm going in, I'm like, oh no, this is interview number 4. We need to stop. So
Hmm.
what's a great response? Should it be verbal to the
Hmm.
recruiter? Should I type up an email?
It depends on, your comfort level, really. But in the conversation as a candidate, one of your questions to the screen, because there's almost always that screen with a recruiter or someone before you have the actual interview, just to make sure you have some of the basic skills to do that role. One of your questions, if the recruiter doesn't tell you or the hire leader doesn't tell you, uh, can you please explain the steps of the recruiting process? So
Mhm.
that should be one of your first questions, right along with what is the salary range, right? And when they tell you, if it's beyond what you feel like it should be, if it's an entry level position and it's going to be the salary is $45,000, and you already have a job, and they're like it's going to be 6 interviews, I would respectfully say, my limit is actually 3. So, is there a way that we can fit this into 3 interviews because of my schedule or yada yada yada? If they can't, then I would say, okay, well, then I respectfully would withdraw my application if you want to. But you just part of this job search is being a job applicant, is being aware of who you are and being aware of your capabilities and being fully confident and say and knowing that you can make decisions for yourself. You can control thyself. So you can control yourself. You can't control them, but you have
Right.
to be okay with saying no. You have to be comfortable with yourself to say that this is not worth it for me personally, and be okay saying that. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is asking them for the recruiting process. Step number 3 is, if it's over what you want them to do, then say, that this is my max. Can we figure out a way to make this 3 interviews or 2 interviews? If they can't, then I will respectfully withdraw my application. Simple as that. Candidates withdraw applications all the time. I can tell you that right now. It's nothing new. Candidates withdraw applications all the time.
That's good. That's good. It's like you don't ghost them. You have the conversation
Mhm.
because you want to go ahead and again because you applied for that position for a reason and for that company and you want to stay in good standing. I
Yes.
love that. And so with that now, with like you said, you've seen people withdraw applications all the time or candidates withdraw applications. Is that particular metrics tracked, or what type of metrics is actually tracked with the organization and how important is it? Because I know numbers are important. I'm
Mhm.
like, I know numbers are important. Sometimes people don't think numbers aren't important. What numbers are important as an organization that they should be looking at?
Those numbers are important. So they do organizations do track it, and they should if they don't. But the easiest way to track it is by having the technology
Mhm.
where you are actually what's called dispositioning. So you're actually taking the candidate out of the candidate pool for that role, for that specific reason of they withdrew their application. And you may be able to even put in a secondary reason as to the reason for the withdrawal. Maybe the offer was too low, or so. Organizations do track that. And if you don't, you definitely should, because you want to. That's the only metric that's going to help you know that there might be something we need to change about our recruiting process, or we're actually offering too low for this role, so maybe we should up the budget a bit on this. So metrics give you a lot of information. One of the most important metrics that you should track is your quality of hires and your time in process, the time that candidates spend in the entire recruiting process, as well as your quality of hires. Are you hiring the right people in the right roles? Are those people that are actually making significant impacts to your organization?
That's good. That's good, and that's huge because I know one of the issues. One of this company I used to work for, a Fortune 500 company, they were unable to keep for long periods of time candidates of color, employees of color. Like even though they were getting these awards here and there, like, oh, we're the best company for veterans and for women, but then what about people of color? It was really low, and they weren't in the leadership role. And so I had the opportunity to come along aside of HR and really have those conversations on, these are the reasons why this is the complaints that we're getting. And it began to get a little better. There's some I'm not there anymore, but we still have conversations
Mhm.
from old teammates and things. And I mean, even with that piece, with diversity, like how important is it for them to be tracking diversity within an organization?
It's they have to, they must, because candidates are looking at it.
Hmm.
And not only are candidates looking at it, when you lay off people, and if you happen to be laying off a whole bunch of people of color, and of course that's part of the whole layoff metric. You try to make sure that you're not laying off a whole bunch of the same attribute about people.
Hmm.
But if you just so happen to lay off like that, could, if there's no leadership, if there's no if there's no leadership that's a person of color or a woman, and you lay off that one person, that person is going that's going to end up a negative impact on your employer brand. So it's really important to have diversity where it doesn't look like, oh, this was the only woman in this was the only woman, this was the only Indian woman in this department, this was the
Hmm.
like, you don't want that, and they happen to get laid off. You don't want that, because even if that was not the intention, that was not the thought, it still looks that way. So if you have a diverse organization, you don't have to concern yourself with that. And then also on top of that, when candidates look at your website, they look at your senior leadership team. And when you're
I
in,
try.
everyone, everyone do it.
I'm one
Everyone
of
do it.
those who do.
Yeah, everyone, they look at your senior leadership. And if you are not a white male and all you see are white males, or you see a whole bunch of white males and one woman who's the CHRO, who's the chief, she's a human resources leader. Like if that if that's all you see, and you're looking at that organization, it may not stop you from applying, but you are going to ask questions. I would advise anybody to ask questions if they're still going to apply, or they're going to look at your organization and think, I might have an issue within this organization. So that it's really important to measure it. But one of the most important piece of getting these metrics is doing something about the metrics, right? So you just said that you had a chance at this company to speak to HR about these diversity issues that they were facing and why people of color were not staying. And some things change. Someone who spent time with you, so one of your employees that spent time with you to give you this insight, they shouldn't feel like, some things changed. Really, some things should change. You shouldn't take the time away from employees for these type of things, and then they walk away feeling like they wasted their time.
Hmm.
They should see some things happening.
That's good. That's good. And even with these metrics, I know that they've been getting better and better. I'm like, we see all these great numbers.
Hmm.
Like, so what systems, if somebody don't have a system in place, because I know you're certified in certain systems, so I really want you to talk about that, really streamlining that, because again, if there is so happen somebody be like, how many diverse candidates do you have in this area and that area? It's like having those systems in place is really, really important to
Hmm.
be proactive and not reactive. What systems should organizations really use to pull those type of numbers? And then beyond those numbers, what type of systems should they have to just help with the showing the success of the company and the candidates that they choose?
Yeah, so I'm certified in Workday and in iSIMS, and those are usually or systems for enterprise Fortune 500 companies. Those are pretty expensive systems, and your small business isn't like you're going to put in that investment. But if you are working for a large enterprise and you're in the space to make those decisions, and you're using, I mean, if it's Oracle. I mean, I don't like them, so I'm just going to say it. If you're using Oracle, and it's time to make a change, then I would definitely suggest either Workday or iSense, because those are great like full and complete HR systems that are going to give you all of those metrics and be able to give you information about the full life cycle of an employee, from them as an applicant down to retirement, if they last that long, right? For small businesses, I have a few. So I broke it down by enterprise and small businesses, because what is really difficult for small businesses is to find something that they can afford or they're willing to invest in. Because something like a Workday or iSIM is going to cost you millions of dollars, and you may not per year, and you may not be able to afford that, or invest in that right now.
Right.
So some useful ones I like are Just Works. It's very useful for small businesses, and it charges per employee. So if you have two employees, like, you're paying for those two employees, and that's it per month. So you're probably paying like maybe $60 a month for those two employees for this full all-in-one system. And the great thing about HR technology now, than when I first started HR technology, is that you have these all-in-one systems that talk to each other because of technology. So because of this cloud that we're all sitting under, because of that, now you don't have to have a completely different system for HR, complete different system for recruiting, and figure out a way to get all the information in one. No, you can just have one system, and it houses all of your data. Another one is Superworks. That one I think would be for an organization that has 50 employees, because that's $3,000 per month. So if you're especially like financial, if you're a financial firm of 50 employees, or a consulting firm, and you're really hitting those numbers, that would be a great system for you.
Love it.
Great HR is free for organizations that have less than 25 employees, and also HR Partner. It's minimal. It's about $100 a month for people with 25 employees or less. So those are some great systems that are actually going to help take administrative tasks out of your hands as an HR leader, a recruiter, and a hiring leader. HR Partner is targeted to the business owner, not to HR. So it's basically saying, the system, will be your HR partner. So those are going to take those administrative tasks. You can get back to your business out of your hands, as well as give you those metrics that you need to make adjustments to your processes.
I love that. Like you name quite a few, and I would say I only maybe know one of them. But because of that, it's like the ones that you name, do they usually allow you to chat with individual? Do they, will they walk through it so you feel comfortable?
Exactly, they do. They do. And then I'm actually, and I'm not pushing HR Partner, because it just so happens that they just have, they just have so many features. They can be implemented in a matter of days. And I've personally been able to implement a system in a matter of days for myself and for other smaller organizations, where they don't have a full HR implementation can take 1 year. And a lot of these smaller organizations don't have that kind of time. I don't have time to 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 invest 1 year into building this one system. It's going to take too many funds. It's going to take too much time. It's going to take my employees away from the normal day-to-day jobs. I don't have that. So this is something that you can implement in days, and then also call into the help desk and the support teams of these systems to have them help you through this process of entering employees, or building this report, getting that metric, things like that.
I love it. I love it. Because I know that's really important. You just don't want to buy something and then not use it and not use it to its fullest. So
Exactly.
that's really important. So all of this information, because you're helping both the employee, you're helping the employer, small business, large business, and the organization. I would have to say, as organizations, as we know, layoffs are far from being done. As long as we live, there will be layoffs.
Yep.
And so for the employee, how do we properly prepare ourselves as we go into a business, knowing that there's a possibility for whatever reason
Hmm.
that a layoff might happen. So us preparing ourselves, and then on the flip side of the businesses, they do have to prepare for that. You're in the conference room, you're having the discussion. There's advancement in technology. You may not need as many people, within like the media space.
Hmm.
Once AI hit, I'm gonna tell you what, it was just like content managers. It went from, I don't know, from this to maybe two or three. How do how did they prep themselves? How does everybody prep themselves again so it won't be devastating?
So there's a few things that people can do. Number one thing is the mindset of there's layoffs happening. It's a bad job market. Get that out of your head. Layoffs happen, and they don't necessarily mean that it's a bad job market. It just means layoffs are happening, because I can tell you that that same company that just laid off, if you go to their careers page, they're still hiring. They have not shut down their careers page. They haven't. So it's still, so as bad as it seems, the layoffs have happened. Job market, people are still hiring, jobs are still hiring, so you can still tomorrow, next week, end up in something else. Also, the company, that same company that laid you off, could call you back. It happens all the time. So that's one thing I want get that out of your mindset, that this is a bad time to be looking for a job. It's not a bad time to be looking for a job. Go out there and look for a job. Next thing would be to make sure that even though you're employed, even though you love your company, you should always, your resume, your online personal persona should always be updated. Always.
Absolutely.
Because that's how people find people now. Recruiters, leaders find people through their online pages, their LinkedIn page, their TikTok pages. All I forgot, Nona Roberts. Like, she was working at her company in another job, and she had an online persona that she was doing through her church, and she was doing speaking, doing all these other things. And her current company happened to see her page and see what she was doing, and then asked her to do other things within her organization, and it significantly bumped up her pay.
I love
Significantly bumped up her pay. So you should always keep your online persona updated, because you can make moves internally. You don't even have to leave that company. Internally, they can see that, hey, just like Nona, she has a speaking skill. Maybe
it.
we should start using her for some of these other, we should start sending her to conferences to speak on behalf of the company. Maybe we should have her do, them do this. So you should always have that updated. And it's the same thing on the other side with external people that you're not working for. They're constantly out there looking for someone to fill a role, a passive candidate, someone that's not out there, that's not an actual job seeker, but they see that what you have out there, about what you have done, your skills, they seem to match what we're looking for. So we want to reach out to you. And that may lead to your dream role, or what you really want to get into, or a new challenge that is going to exponentially raise your salary, but also exponentially raise your skills. So when things in technology impact what you used to do, you're not really impacted, because you've upskilled. And then that's the third thing, is to continuously upskill, because technology isn't going anywhere.
That's right.
It's going to continually evolve, and it's going to continually uh, get rid of jobs. But one thing I say, and the thing I say about AI, is that AI is never going to be better than people. Honestly, I say this: either the Terminator is going to happen, if anyone knows the movie Terminator series. Either we're going to be, what happened in the movie, the Terminator movies, is going to happen in real life. or or we got to face the facts that AI is not better than human. It's never going to be better than human. So what you have to do is upskill your skills, your soft skills. So things like speaking, communicating, content creation, all of those things are skills that you can upskill. So if for example, something that recruiters face is the fear of losing their jobs because of AI. A lot of recruiters got laid off in the last year
Mhm.
because of that. So that's their fear. However, the AI cannot replace talking to a person.
That's right.
AI can replace some of the administrative tasks. AI can help read the resumes and present to you, the human being, who is a great candidate based off of some metrics. But they're not going to replace being able to nurture that candidate and create a great experience. So it's really about nurturing and upskilling in those areas to make sure that if you get laid off, it doesn't matter because I can get something else because I have all these other skills.
I love that. It's like, when you said AI is not going to take up, they can't, because our brain is bigger than that. We can
Yes.
create, because the creation is made from different events that has happened in our lives that hasn't happened to AI. Now, granted, they can grab all of this, but it's still like the feeling of things.
Hmm.
And so just talking about, people not being replaced, this also goes into, yes, you guys guessed it, into government contracting, right? I would have to say within every department, every business, everywhere I go, the schools, police, the Department of Defense, NASA, all of them, they need people, and they need solid people. They need great people. I was just on a call last week, and the great thing about it was they were talking about AI, they were talking about technology, but they were like, but we need to connect with other small businesses to move X, Y, and Z forward. They didn't say, oh, it's just AI, all of you guys with these minority certifications, boom, you're being replaced. Because being in that tech space, we begin to realize that we can take this piece and help to accelerate this. So I
Hmm.
love how you said to upskill, where you are and how you use that. And so when we look into the staffing of these different departments, again, within the schools, within the, like I said, Department of Transportation, within, veterans, all of this is needed. Like your skill set is needed. They need to hear about this. They need to know how to speak to people when it's time to release them and let them go. Because when you release a person, I'm like you, I got laid off. Unfortunately, fortunately, I got fired. And it was like, you just released me. Woo! Now I can go out and
Thank
do
you.
what I really need to do. You know,
Hmm.
and even like you talk about your attitude, it's like, how do I look at this event that just happened in my life? Because something's gonna happen. It's like one thing, how they say one thing you can count on in life is death and taxes. It's change. You most definitely, you should expect change. And I love how you talked about that LinkedIn. I'm bringing in a guest next week. He talks about LinkedIn just as much as I talk about LinkedIn. I'm super excited to have him on there because, again, you are being proactive. You're being proactive. And so when the change happens, it's not just traumatic, like,
Exactly.
you know. So one of the questions that I have here is, talking about being proactive. So this individual was proactive. His LinkedIn was up to date. His resume was up to date. He interviewed for a job, and interview went well. They said, "Great, you have the job." He gave a 2 week notice, and 2 days before he's supposed to start his job, they were like, "We don't need you."
Hmm.
So unfortunately, because he gave the 2 weeks, his other job was like, "You were planning to leave us anyway.
Yep.
We don't want you back." How does a person, because again, this is a person's livelihood,
Yes.
how do you transition when you are looking to ensure, you're not leaving your current job in the lurch, but you don't want to be without a job, and just reading that, I know, or talking about that, I know that this is not the first time something like this has occurred.
Mm-mm. Yeah. It hasn't. I've heard. I luckily have never had to do that to anyone. Luckily, when I was working in corporate roles. However, I know it has happened. I've known a few people that has happened to, and it's really horrible. And it's because budgets change. Any it could be for a number of reasons that can happen. But one of the things I tell people is even after offer, don't stop looking. Don't stop looking. Don't stop going on interviews. Don't stop. Because you don't know what can happen, especially in this day and age where it depending on the organization that you're going for, they can be in such a volatile state that if they don't have their things in order, that this could happen. So one of the things is don't stop looking. Continue to look even after you accept your offer. And you could and not just because of the organization taking back the offer and saying that they don't need you anymore. But what if you find something that you like even more and you end up saying that actually, you know what, I'm going to not take this offer and take something else because you may find something better, because I've seen that much more often.
Okay.
I've seen organizations take back the offer. I've seen candidates reject the offer after accepting more than I've seen organizations take back the offer. So that's the main reason why I say continue your search even after accepting. Another thing is you can find out the stability of organization through your interview process. I'm not blaming this person. I'm not blaming the candidate, because that really is the fault of the organization. But you can give yourself more information the more questions you ask about the organization and their stability and their process and their budget. Like, what's the budget for this? What, especially if it's a leadership position, like
Right.
how are you handling your budgets? Will this position have power over a budget? Have a power for signing? What is the process for your for your budget? Asking specific questions about that will give you a lot of information about the stability of the organization, and if they even have a process. If they are stumbling over the words to answer this question, you kind of know that, they're kind of messy, and
Mm,
maybe I should rethink taking this offer. So there are just things that you can do to give yourself ideas of more insight about that company, so you don't even end up in that situation. However, if you do end up in that situation, the best transition would be, I'm not sure if this person applied for unemployment, but I definitely wouldn't apply for unemployment. I would at least take the chance, and they're probably going to reject you because your reason is going to be, I quit my job. So you're probably automatically going to get rejected, but I would appeal that rejection.
that's
um,
good.
I would appeal my rejection, and that's going to bring about, not a court case, but a hearing. It should bring about it, depending on the state, but it should bring about a hearing so you can explain what occurred. So I would at least I would at least go that route, to help myself financially, to see if I can get some income coming in, and really just take take a look back for this person specifically. Take a look back at the entire interview process and try to, just like when you're dating, like, and all of a sudden you're hit with, this person's a narcissist, or this person is like control, this person's
It's always like that.
like, how did I end up in this controlling relationship, right? So how did I end up with this jealous person? Like, think back to the red flags that you may have ignored, that they may have let you know that they were unstable. And when you think back to that for your next interviews, ask the questions, ask those questions, because you're going to be able to give yourself a lot of insight to them dropping nuggets
I
that they were an unstable organization.
I love that. No, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay,
Well,
thank you very much. That was good. That was good. So, I mean, you are a plethora of knowledge. How can small businesses, all the way to Fortune 500, Fortune 100 businesses, can reach out to you? How can they work with you to, again, getting the right candidates, keeping the right candidates, and just, organizational help?
So I we are a full service HR consulting company. But where I love the areas that are my niches that I love to work on really are helping organizations with HR technology, as well as helping organizations get the right people in the door, teach them how to do that on their own, so they don't always need a consultant like me. And so I have specific subscription packages for small business organizations that start at $4,000 a month. So it starts at $4,000 a month. That's a subscription service of a certain amount of hours that we provide you with this HR partner or this HR tech associate that's going to help you through all of these processes, help you build them out, help you put them into a system, build that system out for you for a certain amount of time. And so based off of if you have that need, then we have that for you. We also have where you just need somebody to come in and just come in and evaluate what we're doing and help us tell us what we need to change, and we'll do it ourselves. We have those packages available as well. So the best way is to reach out to me at Lore Consultants, or at the email address at the bottom of this at the screen, loreconsultants.com. Reach out to me so we can discuss what your needs are, and we can just really put together the best package for you.
I love that. I love that customization because that's really, really huge. You mentioned some things concerning smaller business, but all the way to large business, because we need it. We shouldn't wait. We don't want our name splashed all over the internet streets of being a terrible employer.
No,
Like,
I
never.
no, you do. I just received a text message yesterday from someone. It was a Glassdoor URL. What do you think about these reviews about this company? I'm about to go on an interview. Candidates are like, they're looking at it. They're looking at that information, and the organization had a rating of 3.6. 3.6 out of 5, and that's not even a bad rating. That's not even that bad. And still, I got the text message saying, "What do you think about these reviews? How would
Wow.
you handle your interview? What questions would you ask?"
Wow.
So their candidates are basing the questions they're going to ask and their opinion, that they're coming in with a predetermined opinion about your organization before they even come in the door. So these internet streets are impacting your bottom line.
Wow. No, that's good. That look, you dropped that good nugget right at the end. Like, boom. It is. It's like reputational risk is a real thing, and
Mhm.
we have to be, prepared for it. But I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
It was really, really good. It was absolutely wonderful. And I look forward for folks to please reach out to her because, we all we all need help, y'all. We all need help. And if you have any questions, I have her information streaming. If you're on LinkedIn, I have her tagged in LinkedIn. I have her tagged in YouTube. I have her tagged in Facebook. Tag her, look her up. Please look at her information. I'm talking about more of my small business people. Look at her information first. Reach out to her. Talk about customization. My large organizations, you need her. Don't even think about it. You know you need her.
And we have the package for you. Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate you having me. This was great.
All right. Bye bye.